is a phenomenal stand here, and all of America is watching. We need to remember that. We've had rallies before, and we've stood up and we've said no more. Here's a problem, America. We keep saying no more, and we keep taking more. And we need to stop taking more lawlessness from government. We need to draw the line. Read my lips. The people should be armed equal to government. Because when the people are armed, there is liberty, and when there is liberty, there is safety, and there is security. We must stop trading away our children's birthright for false promises of security in trade for liberty. Because that, my friends, is not liberty, and that's why we stand here today. As we go out from this rally today, and we've got a few hours of phenomenal speakers, but when we go out, we need to remember that we're not just standing here today to defy this legislation. In a little while, we're going to open up signing for the Declaration of Affirmation, and I'm going to read it to you, and those that wish to sign it can step up and put their name and pledge to stand by liberty. Now, no one will hold it against you if you don't, and when we read this, you can decide if you want to put your name by that and if you want to step up and sign that declaration and send the government a firm and resolved message that we will no longer tolerate this tyranny. This is my brother Nathan Seim. We often go out and do things together, taking on activism. He was also there with us at the Bundy Ranch, standing against the bureaucratic terrorists who were assaulting private property and liberty in Nevada. By God's grace, America stood down the bureaucratic terrorists on that Saturday last spring, and we will continue to do so. And that was a pivot point in our history. Some people thought it was about cows or grazing rights. No. It wasn't about cows, it was about liberty. It was about government entities that have no lawful authority trampling the people and keeping their boot on our neck. And we have to cast the boot off the neck. We respect and we honor officers and public officials that honor their oath. But we must remember that a public official that does not honor their oath is a criminal, and they need to be regarded as such. You ready? With that, my brother Nathan Seim. Let's give him a hand.
My name is Nathan Seim, as Gavin already said, and I want you all to know that I don't want to be here. I'd rather be at home, spending my time on my own pursuits. I would rather be doing my own thing, but this is necessary. We need me here, we need all you people here. But as for me, I'm not here for my personal rights. I'm here for justice. Don't get me wrong, I believe I have a constitutional right to own and to carry this weapon, and it cannot be infringed. But I am here because, as a Christian, my God loves justice and judgment. And justice says that what our government is doing is wrong. And if it is wrong, no matter what rights it may or may not violate, it is your job, your duty, if you are a believer, to stand against it. If you are not a believer, you ought to stand against it anyway, because if you don't, your future generations, your children, will be slaves. That is the truth. However, if you are going to stand for justice, for what is right, you need to make sure that you're not just doing it in public. It needs to be at home as well. If you expect to win a war of justice, you have to act justly in your own private life. You cannot say to the government, I defy your lawlessness, and live lawlessly. You cannot say, I will not let you take what is mine, but say, I want you to take my neighbor's money and send me a check every month. So if we expect the blessing of the God of heaven, of Jesus Christ on our battle, then whether or not we are Christians, we must have with us in our hearts and in our lifestyle a character, a way of being just. We need to be looked at as honorable people, not just here in the crowd, but to our neighbors who live next door. to our children, to our wives. Furthermore, I am thrilled you are all here, and this battle is going very well. This is my third battle. This is a war. We are not going to win it in one battle. There's going to be other events, whatever they may be, you are going to need to support. When I went to Bundy Ranch, thought that I was going to be able to go and take my stand, do my duty, and go home and not worry about it anymore. That was absurd. Exactly. You don't win a war, and I'm not speaking of a violent war, but nevertheless, you don't win a war in one battle. So then, there's going to be another one. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't even know if it's going to be in Washington or who's going to arrange it. But I hope to be there, and I hope to see all of you there. God bless America.
Well said. Thank you, Nathan. I hold my mic closer, I guess. Okay. You know, Nathan's absolutely right, because I get this often. You know, I go out and I do videos or I do these stands, and people think that I do this for fun. And going to government and saying no, and standing up and saying no, and putting ourselves out there is not fun. It makes us proud to stand up for what's right, and it should as Americans. But we have jobs, we have families. I'm a rather unexpected activist. I'm just a small business owning father. I make family portraits and put them on people's walls. I teach photography. So why am I up here standing for guns? I'm not up here standing for guns in particular. I'm standing for liberty and for America. And we need to remember that when the framers stood up, they were everyday men. They were people who said, we cannot tolerate this injustice any longer. And if we don't stand up, make no mistake, if we do not stand up, America, our children and our grandchildren will take back liberty at the price of blood. We have a duty to stand. Let me introduce Representative Graham Hunt here. This is how you represent America.
I'm glad to see some Second Amendment enthusiasts out here. Thank you. You know, on November 4th, we watched one of the battles that our nation is facing that we lost here in Washington State. But a war consists of many more than a single battle. But this is a battleground state. I'm sure that all of you have heard that now, because it passed here, they're going to propose this type of legislation in other places. But I'm here to tell you that you have representatives here in Olympia right now that are here because we believe the same thing that you do, and that's the very simple fact that the Constitution states shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. Come on, shall not be infringed. It's not complicated. This was an 18-page bill that is more than background checks. Have you noticed? Aside from hurting the individual liberties of an individual, it's also potentially going to cost the Washington State revenue because you've got businesses that are potentially going to close. They have to if it's enforced. You can't have armed security. You can't have armed transport. You can't have companies that make holsters that are specific for your weapon type, custom holsters. We have manufacturing companies here in Washington State that if you have a firearm that you want to have a holster made for, you can't hand them your firearm now to have it made without doing a background check and a transfer. And oh yeah, then you've got to get a background check and a transfer to give it back to me. Does that make sense? Absolutely not. What we have right now is millions of dollars coming in from outside of Washington State, and unfortunately some came from inside the state too, to tell people that this was about background checks. If it was simply a background check bill, I don't think you would have this type of opposition. This is much, much more than that, and we're going to fight it here in Olympia. And there's a few of us that are here today, including Representative Elizabeth Scott. Thank you. I'm sure we'll probably see Representative Matt Shea, Representative David Taylor, Representative Jesse Young. There are many of us here right now to make sure that your message is carried forward. This will not stand. And I hope that you join us in the war peacefully, because we don't want to be divisive. We don't want people to start thinking that this is about guns and that this is about taking away anything other than our rights. We need to no longer divide people. We need to educate people. We need to educate them on exactly what this is, because we had people that were voting that probably have never visited a gun show. Probably never knew that most gun shows you have to be a member, and in order to be a member you have to have had a background check. Imagine that. And there's one of my neighbors right there. Good to see you. Imagine that. Imagine that. So we need to educate them. And I ask that you join us in this so that we can win the next battle and we continue to educate our neighbors that may not have these firearms, that this is much more than just background checks. Thank you for coming out here. Thank you for taking part in this. And thank you for the organizers for putting it together. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right. Who's standing for liberty? We got a couple phenomenal speakers coming up for you, and we've had some great ones up already. A lot of bold, proud patriots out here today. You know, let's raise something about this 594. Where now it's a felony to hand my gun to a friend, except it's not a felony because Initiative 594 is not law. In 1778, when they were debating the Constitution, Alexander Hamilton said that all legislation that violates the Constitution is void. You can't make a law that violates the law that we the people said is supreme, because it's not law. All it is a piece of paper, and it should be thrown in the trash, and that's where Initiative 594 and everything like it belongs. America, this is amazing right here. We may not have 30,000 people here, but we have stood together collectively and we have stolen the victory of the gun grabbers on Initiative 594, because the only thing anyone is talking about is that we are ignoring that law. And it's just the beginning. Now, gentlemen, you want to step up here? Let's see how much force Initiative 594 has. Oh, they're not in jail. It turns out patriots can hand a gun off without hurting anyone. With that, I want to bring up a bold patriot and the founder of the 3% movement, and a very respected speaker who's going to really get you thinking today, Mike Vanderboegh.
Oh my. Well, I'd like to introduce myself, I guess. A lot of you folks don't know me. My name is Mike Vanderboegh. I'm from the great free state of Alabama. And I must say it's a trifle colder than I'm used to this season at any rate. If you got to pigeonhole my politics, I'm a Christian libertarian. I believe in God, free men, free markets, the rule of law under the Founders' Republic, and that the Constitution extends to everyone regardless of race, creed, color, or religion. I also believe that the Second Amendment is the guarantor of liberty in this country, the right to keep and bear arms, which is not created by the Constitution, but merely codified by it. Now, I am the founder of the 3% movement. I'm also very humbled by the fact that I was one of the guys that broke the Fast and Furious story in December 2010 on the internet. One of the guys that helped the whistleblowers get in touch first with the Senate and then with Cheryl Atkinson of CBS News, and the rest is history. I've been a Second Amendment activist for 20 years. And I got to tell you something. I've seen a lot of history in those 20 years. But today, this day, this is history in the making, folks. Look around you. This is history in the making. And you are making it. So I want to say, welcome to the resistance behind enemy lines. I bring you greetings from your fellow resistance fighters in Connecticut, New York, Maryland, and Colorado. Look around you. What you see are fellow soldiers of the Army of the American Republic in mobilization against a tyranny that the founders themselves warned us about. A tyranny that their diligent study of history told them would one day come. And despite their best efforts and their plans, that day is here. But so, as they expected, you are here as well. In answer to their ghostly call across the centuries, you are here. As I said, you are by no means the first to join this resistance. In Connecticut, New York, Maryland, Colorado, this fight to defy tyrannical state laws has been quietly raging for a year and a half now. I know this because I've been behind enemy lines in those states. I have personally broken their laws by smuggling in forbidden items. And so have my friends. I have met the brave men and women who have faced down their own state governments, who have refused to kowtow to unconstitutional diktats, and who maintain their defiance even when threatened with the coercive powers of their local regimes. They have defied those governments, and the tyrant wannabes don't know whether to defecate or go blind. You know, the founders were as suspicious of unrestrained democracy as they were of absolute monarchy. Both can be tyrannical. Both can be deadly. Both are threats to life and liberty and property. This is why they crafted a constitutional republic. The founders knew that the mob could be manipulated by cynical elites to rob other citizens of their liberty, their property, and their lives. Cynical elites, wealthy men, powerful men, with unceasing appetites for more and more power. Sound like anybody you know? Are you listening, Bill? Tyranny, as you have now experienced with I594, can be voted into existence by a majority. This does not make it right. It does not make it legitimate. Indeed, it is a violation of natural law and natural rights derived from God. And I refer you to the Declaration of Independence for the finest expression of that truth. For as a people, we have been here before. The faces change. The soothing lies told to mask the tyranny shift. But the conflict is the same. The question is the same and has been since the time of the founders. Do the people serve the government, or does the government serve the people? Sorry, I'm not very good at this. I have to write my speech and then read it. This is the question that Bill Gates, Paul Allen, and Michael Bloomberg answer one way, and we answer the other. There is no negotiating or finessing the answers. It is not possible. It is one or the other. It cannot be both. One side or the other will win the argument. And I swear by the Founders' Republic and the great God Jehovah that we will win this fight. We will win it or die trying. For as the Founders knew, it does not matter if a common criminal breaks into your home to rob, rape, and pillage, or if a majority of your neighbors vote to have the same thing done to you. The inalienable right to self-defense of liberty, property, and life remains the same. And let me tell you a home truth we know down in Alabama. And I say it to you, and I say it to all the Bill Gates and Paul Allens and Michael Bloombergs of the world. When democracy turns to tyranny, the armed citizenry still gets to vote. So be careful what you wish for, you may get it. And I'm not joking when I say that you are now behind enemy lines. If we are going to tell the truth, let us first tell the truth to ourselves. Let us have no illusions. Let us not try to sugarcoat what is obvious to anyone who has eyes to see. The people who crafted I594 knew exactly what they were doing. Tyrants develop appetites for other people's liberty and property and lives, and they will manipulate the mob in order that they might eat. Such people are the very definition of what the founders called domestic enemies of the Constitution. So let us be plain. If they are enemies of liberty and they have temporarily succeeded in stealing ours, then they are enemies of the Founders' Republic. And you here in Washington are now indeed behind enemy lines. This is no joke. This is as serious as it gets. Claiming legitimacy in a single election, they will send armed men to your door to work their will upon you, to feed their appetites. This is the iron fist of tyranny that they wrap their velvet lies around. Do it, they command, or else. To which I would reply, or else what? For the truth is that the rule of law as crafted by the founders protects them from us more than it protects us from them. And if they destroy that rule of law, they will be taught that lesson by the very people that they seek to victimize. They will be taught that lesson by you. But we did not have to be here at this place with our backs to the wall, our firearms on our shoulders, forced into these awful choices. We are here because of failures. Failures of our own and failures of others entrusted to wage the political fight to secure our liberties from just the sort of threat that I-594 represented. If we are going to tell the truth to the domestic enemies of the Constitution, let us tell the truth to ourselves and to our allies in this fight. For years, gun rights groups have fought on the same battlefields using the same tactics, and consistently, incrementally, sometimes almost invisibly, we have lost. We lost because we let the enemies of liberty define the battlefield. Yet having been pushed back again and again, the people that we entrusted to defend our liberties politically are now insisting that we all do the same thing again and again because, well, that's what they do. And if you don't like it, if you don't like the fact that that they are losing your rights for you, you simply need to send them more money so that they can lose some more. So let us be honest. Petty jealousies, touchy egos, cynical jockeying for position lost the political fight against I-594. The NRA did the minimum required to convince their members that they were doing something without really doing something because they did not want to ally themselves with Alan Gottlieb. For his part, Alan Gottlieb seemed happy for the NRA to cede the battlefield to him, for he reclaimed the credit for the victory. Only one thing happened: they didn't win. They lost. We all lost. And now we are here because grown men and women acted like jealous children. But it is time to cease acting like children. Because of our own failures, it is time to stand up and act like adults. This is not a game with no consequences and merely played for points. This is deadly serious. It's as serious as it gets. And as my friend David Codrea says, it is a time for any chair in a bar fight, regardless of who gets the credit afterwards. And this means working with the very people who are responsible for I-594's win. The fact that we are here today, armed, pointing out that I-594 is trumped, is negated by the law of unintended consequences, does not mean that the political fight is over. Folks, it's just getting started. We need the NRAs and the Gottliebs of this state to put away their petty jealousies and to fight, really fight, not to make deals that compromise essential liberty. We need them to work together. But we are here today to remind them and to remind the enemies of liberty in this state that if they fail, there are always Second Amendment remedies. And if that scares them, if they are made uncomfortable by that, if they continue to bicker like children and play the pragmatic game, trying to be liked by the press and understood by their enemies, they should understand that there is always us, eternally us, the Resistance Army and the Founders Republic. And like that determined minority of colonists that original 3% who fought the forces of the greatest empire on the planet to a standstill. We will not be intimidated. We will not compromise. We will not back down, and we will be heard one way or the other. So I say to the deal makers who claim to be on our side, if you want to make a deal, you had bloody well make it based on that reality. To the NRA and the SAF, to Wayne LaPierre and Alan Gottlieb, to all the leaders of every so-called mainstream gun rights group, and yes, even to the domestic enemies of the Constitution like Bloomberg and Allen and Gates, I say, take a good look around you at the reality that one side's failures and the other side's successes have produced. Take a look around at the reality. And that reality is you. And when they have done so, when they have looked around and seen which way the wind is now blowing, I would quote these lines from that most underappreciated American philosopher, Frank Zappa. Do you love it? Do you hate it? There it is, the way you made it. For we are the 3%. We will not fire the first shot, but if needs be, we will fire the last. We will not target innocents like the militarized police units that will be dispatched to the doors of our homes in furtherance of I-594. But we will answer the guilty. We are here. We are not going away. If that scares you, then deal with it. But leave us alone. Ease up out of our faces. Take your hands off our liberty and property and keep them to yourselves as the founders intended. Leave us alone. That's all we ask. That's all we demand. Like the flag says, don't tread on me. Don't tread on us. And to all of you resistance fighters here today, I say emulate your fellow soldiers of liberty in Connecticut and elsewhere who are also behind enemy lines. Be watchful. Be patient. Fight the political fight. Think and act outside the box. Work to prevent violence. But always be prepared as the founders were. And remember Blackerby's advice. Trust in the Lord, boys, but keep your powder dry. Thank you very much.
Come on, let's get another big hand for Mike Vanderboegh. That's what liberty sounds like. And we're just getting started. You know, I just want to thank everybody that came out here today. I mean, really, this is December. And we're out here standing up for liberty. It's not fair weather. It's not sunny and warm. But that makes sense because we're not fair weather patriots. I just want to thank all of these speakers. Some of these people came on their own from across America to stand with us here in Washington today. How about a hand for people like that that stand with the brothers of liberty and will not back down? So let's keep those speakers going, and before we move on to our representative, I want to bring up one of our local residents here in Washington and our nationally syndicated talk show host, Dr. Mike Segal, and he's just going to share a few words with us about liberty.
I have a message for Michael Bloomberg. Go right ahead and keep New York City residents from drinking more than a 16-ounce Coke, but stay out of Washington State's constitutional right and protection of our right to keep and bear arms. What we ought to do is say that only residents of a state can contribute to an initiative in that state. Why should they come in as outsiders taking their demented cultural values? And I'm a native of New York, and those values are demented. Because on the far left, we all know that it's a disease, that the end justifies the means, and they just want to take your guns away, and guess what? They're not going to do it. They will never do it. We need to remind them that this is a nation of law and not of men, starting with Barack Obama. He's not going to take your guns away, and Bloomberg isn't going to. I want to read the first part of the constitutional protection, which is even stronger than the Second Amendment, here in Washington State's Constitution. The right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. Shall not be impaired. The deception of that initiative was abominable. It was unethical. It was immoral. It didn't state on the voting day, when people looked at the headline of that initiative, all of the consequences of it. Nobody read the 18 pages of the mainstream in this state. Had they done that, it never would have passed. And for Paul Allen or Bill Gates or Michael Bloomberg or Barack Obama or Jay Inslee or anybody else to try to take your guns away is an outrage. And let me say one other thing here. 99% of firearms in this country are never used criminally. We don't even enforce the laws that are on the books today. And when the founders created the Second Amendment, they did it for one reason, because they didn't want a tyrannical government controlling people without their ability to respond and to defend themselves. All you have to do is look at Germany and what was done to the Jewish people in Germany, who did not have the ability to fight back. We cannot allow ourselves to be in that position. And given the nature of this administration in Washington, D.C., I wouldn't trust them to protect your freedom any more than I would trust an individual who has no right to come into this state to defend your interest. They don't defend your interest, they defend their own. They want to impose an ideology that is absolutely dead wrong. And no one, by the way, you pass a law, a gun control law, who's going to follow the law? It's going to be honest people. It's the criminals who couldn't care less about a law. They're not going to follow a law that says you can't own a gun. They're going to get it on the black market. They're going to get it anywhere. It's not going to change a thing. The rule of law must prevail. The Second Amendment and the Washington State Constitution both say that Michael Bloomberg is wrong, that he has no business going around the country. He ought to mind his own business in New York State. Let them live under his oppression and his control. Let those people do that. But Washington State will prevail, and when this goes to court, it's going to be overturned. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Segal. That was awesome. You know, we're standing here on the Capitol, and over there is the Capitol building, and we look over there, and it's kind of all gray and run down, and maybe it's because the people running it are gray and run down, and they don't really care about what they're doing. They don't really care that they're representing or not, because they're criminals. But there's nothing that makes me prouder than legislators and representatives that uphold their oath, than officers that uphold their oath. People come to me, and sometimes people watch, and I'll do videos or this or that, and you'll say, well, Devin, you just don't like police. And I laugh. And I say, I don't dislike police. I just hate injustice. And I don't measure a representative or a police officer. We have this attitude of, we say, well, they're good. You know, most of our politicians are good. Most of our representatives are good. Most of our police officers are good. But we have to ask ourselves the question. My representatives and my officers are not measured as good by whether or not they kick me on the head by the side of the road. We know they're bad if they do that. I measure my representatives in government as good if they defend my rights with their life as they swore to do. That is the measure of a good representative. Now here in Washington, we have a Liberty team of representatives, and we're trying to grow it more and more. They're a little outnumbered, but they're a ferocious pack that gets a lot done, and we have some of those here today. We heard from Representative Graham Hunt. And next up, we have another one of our Liberty representatives that I'm proud to introduce, and that's Representative Elizabeth Scott. So let's give her a big hand.
Thank you all for being here. I am a wife and a mother. I taught college English for 10 years, including 2 years in Red Communist China right after the Tiananmen Massacre, and 3 years in the United Arab Emirates in the Middle East. I am the 5th generation to harvest corn on our family farm. My grandfathers were Colonel Ken Perry and Captain Hank Warfel, who was killed in France fighting the Nazis. My father was an air medic in the United States Air Force. And I am a gun owner, a concealed carry permit holder, a Washington Arms Collector member, a lifetime member of Front Sight in Nevada, an NRA Life member, and the first freshman to ever win the Legislator of the Year award from Hunter's Heritage Council, and I will not comply with I-594. My name is Elizabeth Scott, and I'm state representative for the 39th Legislative District, which is most of Skagit County, most of Snohomish County, and a chunk of King. From Monroe to Cedro-Woolley, Arlington, Marysville, Oso, and Darrington, and thank you for all your support during our hard time earlier this year. I will not comply with I-594 because it is unconstitutional, unenforceable, and unjust. Over the next 10 minutes, I will describe why, and we will talk about solutions, including what legislators are doing and what you can do to repeal this law and restore liberty to our land. You might want to be ready a little bit later to jot down some websites and phone numbers with a pen or on your phone. This law is unconstitutional because it directly contradicts our U.S. Constitution and our Washington State Constitution. Now, some of you, my age and younger, I'm 48, by the way. I lived overseas, so I don't care about age anymore. Those of you my age and younger need a little brush up on your history. The U.S. Constitution was written by our founding fathers in 1787, and the Bill of Rights, that is the first 10 amendments, was ratified in 1791. The Second Amendment says, you can say it along with me, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Let's say it together 3 more times while we teach it to the next generation of youngsters here in our midst today. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. 2 more times. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. 100 years later, in 1889, Washington State's founding fathers wrote our state constitution and chose to put it even more strongly, but first let's set the stage. The preamble to our Constitution says, "We, the people of the state of Washington, grateful to the supreme ruler of the universe for our liberties, do ordain this Constitution." Notice that our state founding fathers understood that our liberties do not come from government. Our rights do not come from lawmakers or the public or the voters. We are born with them. They are inalienable. Whether you call these rights natural rights, inalienable, given by providence, or nature's God, or the supreme ruler of the universe, the point is that the Americans understand government did not give you these rights, and therefore government cannot take them away. Government can stomp on your rights, burden your rights, but it cannot truly take them away. You still have them deep down. All right, Article 1, Declaration of Rights from our state constitution. Section 1, political power. All political power is inherent in the people, and governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. Skip forward a few pages, Article 1, Section 24, still in the same section, called Declaration of Rights. Right to bear arms. The right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. But nothing in this section shall be construed as authorizing individuals or corporations to organize, maintain, or employ an armed body of men. Got that? The right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. Join me. The right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. One more time. The right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. Now we have an 18-page law that includes a use tax for the gun buyer or recipient. And don't forget to fill out your consumer use tax return and send it in to the Department of Revenue. And trust us, that form you fill out for the FFL dealer in triplicate that he must keep for over 4 years, no, that's not gun registration. Trust us. This law includes fees, taxes on the fees for the federal firearm license holder who's performing the background check, time delays, going into town for a background check in the middle of a hunting trip because your friend wants to try out your gun, forcing widows to get a background check within 60 days of their husband's death if they want to keep his favorite gun. Shame on them. Forcing museums to give back their borrowed historic guns because they can't afford the background check fees or an attorney to fight it out in court. Even the Department of Revenue has warned shopkeepers that they should consult their attorney for any questions about this law. Department of Fish and Wildlife says, trust us, we won't really enforce that whole transfer thing in hunter education classes. At least, well, maybe not if you're under 18 and if you have an adult right at your elbow. Listen, what part of shall not be impaired do they not understand? This law is blatantly unconstitutional. This law is also unenforceable. Out where I live, east of Monroe, almost to Sultan, people often shoot on their own property. Oh, the joy. Friends come over for a barbecue after church on Sunday and bring their guns. The guns go back and forth as we try them out. It's impossible to enforce this law unless we have a police officer on every back porch and in every living room. It's impossible. There are more of us than there are of them. Because it is unenforceable, this law is unjust. It will only be enforced selectively. That is not right. Law and justice should be blind. They should treat all people the same. If a law is selectively enforced, it is unjust. We are here as an act of civil disobedience. For most people here, it's their first time to do such a thing. Break a law in broad daylight. Wow, how does it feel? Did you struggle? Did you have trouble sleeping last night? Anybody? Well, I was on Facebook about 4 o'clock finishing this speech, and there were a lot of attendees up at 4 a.m. saying, I can't sleep. We're not the first ones to wrestle with this thought. St. Augustine wrote about it in the 4th century A.D. St. Augustine came to the conclusion that an unjust law is no law at all. Much, much later, in 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. wrestled with it. Here's what he wrote, and I quote from letters from the Birmingham jail. He said, "One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are 2 types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws." I would agree with St. Augustine, he said, that an unjust law is no law at all. Now, continuing Martin Luther King Jr., he said, what is the difference between the two? How does one determine whether a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. To put it in the terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, he said, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal law and natural law. End quote. Is it just to infringe or impair upon a person's natural right to protect himself? Of course not. Therefore, we have a moral responsibility to break this law. But this action today is only the beginning. Gun confiscation is already happening in other states. California changed their laws last year about who was allowed to have a gun, and then their state legislature promptly appropriated funds to pay for the police to go house to house down their handy-dandy list of registered guns and confiscated them. Guns that had been purchased legally, mind you, but the laws had since changed, not based on criminal acts. Guns are also being confiscated on the East Coast after gun grabbers changed state laws there. I'm sure many of you have seen the photos of men lined up in Connecticut, waiting patiently in long lines to register their guns. Well, guess what? We here in Washington will not do that. Willow Lobby, come and take them. All right, so what do we do next? Let's talk about solutions. Plan A, let the attorneys fight it out with the Washington State Supreme Court. The courts could strike it down as unconstitutional. Meanwhile, don't hold your breath. We do Plan B at the same time. We educate our neighbors and we increase public pressure with massive gatherings like this one, civil disobedience, and putting pressure on the state legislature. It was public pressure that killed House Bill 1588 last year when universal background check was just a simple 2-page bill. It was still bad, so I'm glad it died, but it was only 2 pages. People like you called, emailed, Facebooked, visited, spoke at the bill hearing, and protested so much that even the Democrats in the House were afraid to vote on it because they were afraid that they would get unelected. They kept the Republicans waiting on the House floor for over 6 hours. Then when they finally came in to vote on it, we voted on 2 different bills and they called it a night. Every gun-grabbing bill that gets brought up in this next session, which starts January 12th, needs to be shut down just like that one. And that will take all of you. There are already some bills being drafted for January. Representative Ruth Cahey has said she will reintroduce her Blame the Parents bill that would punish a gun owner for not keeping it locked up if someone steals it and uses it in a crime. The bill from Christmas 2012, you might remember this one from the press, that actually included going into homes to search for guns. Yeah, expect that one to resurface. Merry Christmas. Bills for smaller magazines, trigger locks, you name it. All right, here's how you can find out what bills are being proposed. Join gun groups and email lists from WAC, NRA, ILA, Second Amendment Foundation, and Facebook groups. Yeah, we're very disappointed in them, but they can help keep us informed of what bills are out there. Sign up for email updates of your legislators on houserepublicans.wa.gov and housedemocrats.wa.gov. You can follow anybody. You can get their emails. You don't have to be a constituent. Sign up for email updates also on WashingtonVotes.org. That's WashingtonVotes, VOTES.org. You can put in keywords like gun, firearm, ammunition, magazine, barrel, trigger, and WashingtonVotes.org will automatically email you whenever a bill is introduced that has those words and keep you updated. At the same time, spread the news about the pro-gun bills. Yes, there are some. The pro-gun bills that are introduced, and urge your legislators to sign on to those bills and to ask for a hearing in committee so we can get them through the process. Tell them that you'll come testify in favor of those bills, or at least come to the hearing and sign in that you're supporting it. Come on, you know you're already on a bunch of lists. What's one more? A few of the pro-gun bills that I will be co-sponsoring will be to fully repeal I-594. It won't go anywhere, but we're going to try, and it'll be there. Other bills to dismantle pieces of I-594. Bills to allow people with concealed carry permits to carry on school grounds. There will be a bill that includes a training requirement, and there will be my bill that doesn't. Eliminate sales taxes on guns and ammo to attract companies to move here. And the Firearms Freedom Act to block federal laws on guns that are manufactured, sold, and kept in our state. Contact your legislators through the Washington State Legislature website at leg.wa.gov. That's leg.wa.gov. And put this hotline number into your phone and share it with your friends. This hotline number can be used anywhere in the state, even if you don't know what district you're in or who your representatives are. So it's great to put in your phone, because then when you're talking with your friends, it doesn't matter where they're from. You can share this one number and it'll get your message to your 2 state representatives and your 1 state senator. Here's the number: 1-800-562-6000. That number again for the legislative hotline, 1-800-562-6000. Memorize it. Put it in your phone. Tell them your address and then leave a voicemail, and it will automatically go to your representatives and your senator. Get a group of friends to come together, or send one of you per week to touch base with the legislators in January, February, March, and April. The leftist, statist gun grabbers will be visiting every day, I guarantee it. Gabby Giffords has come here to testify in committee in that building right over there. And Vice President Joe Biden personally called the Democrats and some of the Republicans last year to try to talk them into voting for more gun control. Your voice should count much more than theirs. Hold your legislators accountable. On January 12th, all the state representatives and half the senators, the ones who were just elected or re-elected, will take the oath of office, swearing to uphold the U.S. Constitution and the state Constitution. Hold us to it. It's your job to fire us if we fail in our duty. Meanwhile, always remember that gun control is not about safety or even about crime. It's about control. Thank you for standing up to help push back tyranny and regain our liberty and the liberty of my children. God bless you and give you victory. I have here a few copies of the United States Constitution for some of the young ones in the audience. Please don't keep it if you're over 18, just pass them farther back. And then I have a message to read from Representative Matt Shea. This message is from Representative Matt Shea, State Representative for the 4th District in Spokane Valley. Good afternoon. I cannot be with you today in physical presence, but I am with you in the spirit of 76. The video revelations yesterday of a Spokane County Sheriff MRAP being used in Spokane Valley because, according to one deputy, quote, we have a lot of constitutionalists, oh God, not that, constitutionalists that stockpile guns and ammunition, lots of ammunition, and quote, lays bare what we are all up against. Instead of being fundamental to America, loving the Constitution and this Republican form of government is now anathema to those in power. I submit to you that if loving the Constitution is now terrorism, then we are no longer a free country. That's why they want to take our ability to bear arms first and then take our arms. Because every single other time that has been done in the history of the world, when the people are no longer feared by their government, they can make us slaves. And this is about more than the right to bear arms. It is about the right to think freely and act freely according to the dictates of our conscience. That's what they really want to take away, our ability to think freedom. We have lost our way as a nation, and it is up to us to bear the burden of this generation and get the country back on the path to freedom. Today, united, not as a party, but as Americans, we resolve to walk any distance, endure any hardship, and remove any obstacle on that path to freedom. And at the beginning of that long journey, rest in the knowledge that we did not run from, but embraced the trouble and hard decisions of our time, so that our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would know peace. May God bless you all, and may we bless God. Matt Shea. God bless.
Yeah.